I had to face the most frightening time there is. Nighttime alone. And I went over to the light switch and I switched the light off. I am Dan Warburton, a transformational coach who's known for having enabled thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners to succeed in extraordinary ways. I've also got web spaces full of testimonials backing this up, and I'm often invited to speak to audiences of thousands around the world about what transformation makes possible. I now get to live an extraordinary lifestyle, and I want you to be able to experience the same. One of the hardest times of my life was when, for the first time, I was living on my own in this tiny little flat, and I'd just come out of a relationship that I'd been in for 8 years. I was engaged to marry this lady. She just didn't feel it anymore, and there I was in this tiny little flat, and I didn't have a career. I didn't have anything that I could say was something to be proud of. I didn't have anything that I could say, I've done this, I've achieved this. Nothing. And I remember at the time I was feeling panic attacks, and I hadn't had panic attacks for a few years. And when I was younger, I ended up being given all sorts of pills and medication to try and help me handle panic attacks. And there I was in this situation where I'd now become committed to a healthy lifestyle, to a lifestyle of success, even though I was far from succeeding. And so I chose to not take any pills, any medication, anything. And I remembered late at night, I had to face the most frightening time there is. Nighttime alone. And I went over to the light switch and I switched the light off. And I lie down on my bed, and it was like getting into my own coffin. It was like, this is it. I'm now lying down to die. And I could feel the panic attacks building, the fear, the terror, and it would build and build and build, and I could feel my chest shutting down and tightening up, and I could hardly breathe. And at that point, I learned, or should I say, I remembered something that I learned from yoga and from working with one of my coaches that did a technique called rebirthing. Look it up, rebirthing through breathing. It's an incredible experience, which is where you basically breathe deep into your lungs and out again. And through doing this, I'd learned that I could be with high levels of fear and challenge and breathe through them. And so as the panic built up through me, what I did was I would breathe. And I would breathe and breathe and breathe, and the panic would build and it would build and it would build. But somehow the panic wasn't getting to this point where it would peak, where somehow I couldn't handle it, and I was screaming or running for the door looking for help, and I was able to just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe. And as I breathed through it, all of a sudden I recognized that the fear was beginning to subside, and it would fade. And then about 2, 3, 5 minutes later, the fear would build and build and build again. So I would breathe and breathe and breathe. And then it got to about 4 o'clock in the morning. I could see the sunlight beginning to stream in through my little window. And I heard this voice in my head. Dan, you haven't actually had a panic attack. You know what? You're going to be all right. And at that moment, I recognized that I heard myself. I'd heard my thoughts tell me I'm going to be okay. And the way that I viewed that was that it was me acknowledging that I'm going to be okay. That the voice came from inside me that I was going to be okay. That in the loneliness, in the darkness, I'd begun to see that, hey, I've got this far, I'm going to be all right. And the minute I got that was the minute I began to choose how I viewed myself in the world. It was the moment I began to see that when I begin to think in a way that's powerful, that's when I begin to take actions that then enable me to succeed. Because the day after, I'd only slept 1 or 2 hours, but I got up and I got dressed and I continued to knock on doors to grow my handyman business. And even as I stood there and I felt the fear and I was worried what people were going to think, I still stood there, and if a door answered, whatever happened, I'd say, hello, my name is Super Dan the Handyman. Here is a flyer. If any of these services interest you, give me a call. And I just carried on doing. And that very discipline of being able to watch my feelings, watch my fears, and realize that I am not my thoughts, I am not my fears, is the skill that's enabled me to succeed to the levels that I have now. I now get invited to speak to audiences of thousands around the world about what it truly takes to become successful, and about my speciality, transformation and transformational coaching, and what it makes possible for entrepreneurs and business owners. And the fundamental rule that I've learned is this, is that I am not my thoughts, my feelings. You are not your thoughts and your feelings. Now, I'm not saying disregard them completely and don't think about them or cut them off, because they're a major part of who you are, and they're a signal as to, are you moving in the right direction? Are you not moving in the right direction? Are you letting your fears and your worries run you, which are simply a survival mechanism that's built into us to enable us to ensure that we remain safe and we be safe? That's all they are. Once you begin to see them for that mechanism that they are, and as only that, you then get to say, okay, I acknowledge you fear, I acknowledge you worry, I acknowledge you panic, I acknowledge you resignation and all these things, and I choose this result, and I choose this dream future. And as you begin to practice that bit by bit, the feelings, the noise, the emotion, the terror begins to lose its grip on you. And as it loses its grip, it literally begins to diminish and fade away. Because rather than behaving because of it, which fuels it, makes it more real, more dominating and more scary, you're focusing on something else, a future you want to create, a result you want to achieve. And as a result, you take your energy out of that dark stuff and you put your energy into something that's great. And what happens is the dark stuff begins to fade away and own you less, and the great stuff starts to rise and rise and carry you with that into your new future. I hope you got something from today's video. Take this on, practice watching your fears and not behave because of them, and instead choose your dream future and behave because of that. Well done, and look out for my future videos. If you've got an entrepreneurial friend, then make them feel special by sharing this video with them. Also, feel free to contact me about anything. And don't forget, if you're truly committed to succeed, then hit that subscribe button.